Okay, we have the latest Ireland Thinks poll for the Sunday Independent, the last one before Christmas. The state of the parties: Sinn Féin on 28, down 3. Fine Gael on 21, unchanged. Fianna Fáil on 19, up 1. Social Democrats unchanged on 5. Solidarity PPP unchanged on 4. The Greens down 1 to 3%. Labour on 4%, down 1. Aim 2 on 3%, unchanged. And Independents and others on 14%, up 3. So Jodie Corcoran on the state of the parties with Jodie Corcoran and Kevin Cunningham. But Jody, first of all, the state of the parties, big drop for Sinn Féin this month.
Yeah, big drop for Sinn Féin. This is just off the bat, this is probably the most interesting opinion poll we've done this year.
Yeah.
If not the most interesting we've done in this series. This is the lowest level, 28%, that we have ever recorded Sinn Féin at. Down 7 points in 2 months now. So that's a sizable fall. That seems to have gone to the independents, up 3%. The government parties are holding steady. Fianna Fáil is up 1 at 19. Fine Gael unchanged. The Greens, I think, down 1.
Yeah.
But after the week that we've had, where Dublin was in riot, you would have expected much more damage to the government parties. But in fact, they've held up quite strongly. And it is Sinn Féin that seems to be in a spot of bother here.
Yeah. I mean, my sense of it was, Kevin, that there's been a bit of a strategic mistake by Sinn Féin this week in terms of the degree to which they've gone after Helen McEntee politically, the Commissioner Drew Harris to a lesser extent. But my sense is they've sort of mismanaged their response to this, recording party political videos at the scene of the horrendous stabbing incident in Parnell Square, waving around a picture in the Dole of this poor vulnerable man on the steps of the school. Not a great look, I don't think, and something they've been widely criticised for, I think. And I think it's evidence in the poll that people are moving from Sinn Féin to independence. So what do you think is driving that particular shift?
Well, I think there is an undercurrent of opposition to immigration in some respects. It's clearly a highly salient issue. In terms of the most important issues, it's larger than ever, and we have an interesting find.
24%, which is up, I think, 9 on the last time we polled it. It's into third place behind housing and cost of living.
Yeah,
so and it's a big jump.
And it's the sort of thing that's been trending upwards for the entire year, in fact. Another question we asked this month was whether people would consider voting for a party that would have strong anti-immigration views. And that is since 2021, which is the last time this poll was conducted, that figure has effectively doubled. So 28% identifying or stating that they would vote for or strongly consider a party that would have strongly anti-immigration views. So that's a reflection of the fact that there is a vote obviously out there in terms of, or at least people considering the importance of constraining immigration itself. But yeah, you mentioned Helen McEntee, obviously.
Yeah, so we also polled on Helen McEntee's performance as Justice Minister, and we would have polled on this in August around the time when she was under pressure on law and order, particularly around Dublin. Back then, her approval rating, people's satisfaction with the performance was at 29%. It's shot up to 38% in the last few days. And that's particularly interesting in the context of everything that's happened, Jodie, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. You would have expected, she's in the crosshairs, you would have expected Helen McEntee, her approval rating would be down. In fact, it's up, up considerably. Furthermore, we asked about whether she should resign because she's facing a confidence motion.
Yeah, that's right.
And a majority, 54%, I believe, say she should not resign.
That's right, yeah.
50% said the Garda Commissioner should not resign. The approval rating of Helen McEntee is actually greater than the approval rating of Mary Lou McDonald. For the first time, Leo Varadkar's approval rating goes over the approval rating of Mary Lou McDonald. Yeah. So from my point of view, I see the riot in Dublin as having a kind of causing a fear effect, and there has been certainly the independents have benefited, but there is also a coming back to the centre. The government parties have held up. The Minister for Justice has increased her approval rating. The Garda Commissioner has held up considerably, so I think the government will be quite happy with this poll. And I think the Justice Minister facing into a confidence motion would be very happy with this.
Yeah, and I think as well that Kevin, like there could be two reasons really, couldn't there? But you would expect in a situation where there's riots on the streets of Dublin and there's a perception that the authorities allowed it to get out of control and didn't get it under control.
Yeah,
that would have a negative impact on the government. Whereas in fact, there seems to be a little, not so much a bump for the government, but that the opposition, at least the mainstream opposition in Sinn Féin, has not benefited. But also, I suppose you could look at it in terms of the shift to independence. Is that reflective of the anti? People think more concerned about migration.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, there's always more than one thing happening.
Yeah.
When you look at politics in any given month, I think the point Jody makes in relation to this and the fear effect, the sort of rally around the flag effect that you might have seen when COVID happened. It's interesting that Leo Varadkar and Micheál Martin, their approval ratings have both improved.
Yeah, the two most popular party leaders in the country now, believe it or not, are Micheál Martin, 46%, Leo Varadkar, 40%, and then Holly Kearns, the Soc Dem leader, is 38%. Then Mary Lou McDonald, also on 38%. Ivana Bacik, 30%. Peadar Tabína Bhéin, 28%. Eamon Ryan coming up the rear on 22%. Helen McEntee, who we also put into this question, 39%. So as Jody says, above Mary Lou McDonald, which is interesting. One other question that we asked, we asked lots of questions, and you'll be able to read a lot more in the Sunday Independent tomorrow. But we also asked about Conor McGregor, because Conor McGregor is someone who's obviously been at the forefront of the public commentary around the riots and the fallout, and someone who has hinted, I guess, at potentially entering the political fray. Bookmakers giving odds on the presidency. The MMA fighter. We asked, first of all, if Conor McGregor should be investigated for alleged incitement to hatred in relation to the Dublin riots. 62% said yes, no, 25%. But we also asked on the political front whether people would vote for Conor McGregor. Would you vote for Conor McGregor for public office, any public office? Yes, 8%, no, 89%. So what do we make of that?
If I were Conor McGregor, I wouldn't be running for office anytime soon.
Yeah.
There's no appetite for Conor McGregor in public office. I do think it speaks to a kind of a concern. He has put out some questionable tweets during the last week or two, and there is an underlying issue in this poll also certainly about immigration and the level of immigration, but also the rise of the far right after the riots. And in fact, we ask about that, and the poll finds there is more concern about the rise of the far right, significantly more concern than there is about the levels of immigration. I think there's something like a 13-point gap between that.
Yeah. So it's would you? What's of greater concern? Increased immigration, 42%. Growth of the far right, 55%. So
yeah. So I mean, I think that's a very interesting finding. But back to Conor McGregor. Certainly, he has his following, but in terms of a political career in Ireland, I don't think he'd be going anywhere.
And Kevin, just to finish up, as the pollster in all of this, my first assessment of this would a pollster be missing out necessarily on people who might be motivated to vote for Conor McGregor because they don't normally vote? Would they be picked up in a poll like this when you do?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting kind of long modelling point on the likelihood of non-voters. There is definitely an issue in relation to non-voters. It's very difficult to capture them sometimes, but no, we do have non-voters. In fact, the subset of the population, of all the subsets, that's one of the ones that actually do significantly like the prospect of voting for Conor McGregor. Bear in mind, 8%. When people say, "Would you vote for?" 8%. In some way, I mean, that's in some respect that's high. I mean, it's bigger than the Labour Party or the Social Democrats or Ain to but at the same time, people could say that in a poll, but also when it actually comes to it, quite often, when a candidate actually becomes a party, then people actually see it for what it is, and then they suddenly like, oh, that wasn't actually what I thought it might have been when I thought about it.
Yes.
So the extent to which you would be able to get that 8%, I guess, is quite limited. But you're right, non-voters actually have are massively important in relation to this. Certainly, it is the case that in many countries, when radical right parties, let's say, not pontificating too much on exactly what Conor McGregor's politics are, but I think we can be fairly certain what area it's in. Those sorts of voters do often tend to come from otherwise non-voting populations. So yeah, it's a good point certainly here.
Okay, so there's that. There's loads more in the Sunday Independent tomorrow and on the Irish Independent website. We've also asked the public for their favourite Christmas song, so you'll be looking forward to the result on that tomorrow in the Sunday Independent.